Okay, so I think this is on. I decided to do a quick little video with some, give you a visual of what's going on here. Um, we have King Queen boards, Queen 5-4 rainbow, and we have a choice on the flop to bet or check. But look what happens if we check. His range is going to break into two parts, and I'll make us a box, two boxes here, right? Okay, on this side, we're going to say his betting range on the flop. Let's like make the damn thing bigger. Shit. Well, that looks ugly. What the fuck? I just want like a goddamn... So you can see this shit. Okay, so we'll say his betting range is going to be over here, and his checking range is going to be over here. Now sometimes he's going to play like some hand both ways some percentage of the time, but the same concept's still going to apply. So what's probably in his betting range? Okay, well, probably some sets, and there are probably some sets he'll check. What's in his betting range? Well, probably some big pairs. Okay, now what's in his, we'll say, because he can value bet weird, we'll say jacks also, just to kind of throw that in there. So then everything else goes into his checking range. Now look what happens. A lot of these hands in his betting range are really strong because he just doesn't have any hands he can really bluff really hard with. Like even say he let's just say for the sake of argument he'll bluff with his worst pairs. Okay, now if you look, his range here after he checks. Okay, now let's say the turn comes, I don't know, like a two of diamonds or clubs or some shit. I forgot what I said in the thing. What happens is when that turn card comes, if he checks, what we're left with is his checking range. That's the new range we're dealing with. And a lot of these stronger hands are no longer in it. So whenever we go from the flop and then he checks, the fact that he checks is what really changes his range, because there are going to be some hands that he would bet instead. So what happens is, even if he's bluffing or value betting thinly some percentage of the time, say, his when he checks, that weakens his range significantly. He's not going to be balancing. He's not going to be sophisticated enough to check a whole lot of strong hands. Except for the obvious ones, like he might check set sometimes because it doesn't seem like we have anything, but he's not going to do it to keep us from having really easy value bets on the turn. So what happens is, okay, he checks. Well, now we can probably value bet two streets, like with a clear conscience, because there's not going to be very many spots we get in where we're going to be behind the range he's calling two bets with. Now compare this to what happens on the flop. Let's say we were on the flop and we were considering trying to get two streets of value, to try to bet the flop and bet the turn. It's just not going to work out too well because there's so many strong hands in his range. He's just going to fold his weaker hands to that second barrel. So let's say we check the flop, he checks. Okay, now we pretty much have we're wide open. We can bet two streets now. We can get two streets of value with a pretty clear conscience because his range is so weak. And he's going to call at least one street with second pair. What's kind of neat here too, and it's something you'll see happen sometimes, this ace king. Sometimes there's going to be a king come on the turn, and you're going to get and unless he plays it really passively, you're going to get probably three bets in. A bet, a raise, and another bet. So that's pretty cool. So let's look real quick at what happens if we bet the flop. So okay, let's say we bet the flop and all these hands are back in his range. We'll just put them up here. Well, now his range turns into two things. He has a folding range, which we'll say is this folding range, and then we'll just say everything else. Fuck. And this is going to include the hands he raises with, hands he calls with, and everything. So what's this folding range? Well, if you look, it's probably folding 3s and 2s, right? Probably folding ace-king, unless he's, you know, sometimes you'll have aggressive players. That'd be a good hand for them to bluff with, since they probably won't have outs against your calling range. So now, if we start breaking his range up, he's probably going to call with at least jacks. We'll say a couple other second pairs, maybe 9s. Okay, and then, you know, everything else goes into this folding range. And if you notice, a lot of these hands in his folding range are hands that would be in that weaker second street range. So what happens is, if we bet, now we're against a super, you know, a strong range that probably beats us. We might be a little bit ahead, but the thing is, we're not going to be able to get 2 streets of value. And the reason for that is he's probably folding at least the 10s and the 9s to a second street, but he's never folding, or, you know, he just doesn't have many worse hands that he's calling 2 streets with. And that's the difference between betting the flop and betting the turn. You know, and waiting to the turn. I mean, you know, we know, because his range is going to be so strong if we bet 3 streets, that we cannot get 3 streets of value. So that's sort of out of the picture. So what we have to think of, and really the overall point that we'll come around to in the hand, and which was the point of posting the hand, was, you know, the theme's value betting. So we think, okay, well, we can't get 3 streets of value because, you know, his continuing range is going to be so strong. Against 3 streets, we're going to be behind that 3 street value range. So what we do is we think, okay, well, can we get 2 streets? And because we don't have to bet on every street to get 2 streets of value, you know, like if we're getting 3 streets of value, we have to bet on the flop, you know, the turn and the river. But if we're betting 2 streets, we have the option of, do we bet the flop or do we wait to the turn? You know, you could try to bet the flop, then the turn, and check the river. You could try to bet the flop, check the turn, bet the river. You could try to check the flop, bet the turn, and bet the river, right? You got different options. So you think about which option gets in 2 bets against the weakest range, right? The range that we have the most equity against. And that's what we're doing. We're seeing here, if we bet the flop, his you know, we're forced to play 2 streets out of position against a strong range. But if we check the flop, you know, our decision's really easy. We can bet 2 streets and be in pretty good shape, because not only will we let those strong hands go to the, or let those strong hands sort of stay behind on the flop, like he's betting those strong hands, and that weakens his range. He's also going to probably perceive our range as being a little weaker, and so he's going to call down a little more. So I hope that sort of makes sense. I'm going to upload this now.